When you think about video games, what grabs your attention? The graphics, the music, the game designs, and of course, the voice work. Many gamers would tell you that good voice acting can help make or break a game to a certain degree. It could pull you out of immersion or enthrall you with likable characters and clever dialogue. So, what happens when an entire organization goes on strike and keeps their members away from the interactive medium we all know and love? Better yet, how does something like that even happen? The short answer to that is expired contracts and a lack of communications. The long answer? Well, we're going to take a look at what led SAG AFTRA of going on strike against 11 video game companies. And those companies would be Activision, Disney Character Voices, Insomniac Games, Blindlight, Electronic Arts, Interactive Associates, Corps of Discovery Films, Formosa Interactive, Take-Two, WB Games, and VoiceWorks Productions. In early 2015, SAG AFTRA, or the Screen Actors Guild, American Federations of Television and Radio Artists, a union that represents professionals from news writers to stunt performers, began negotiations for a new updated contract. Talks between SAG AFTRA and interactive game companies continued as the first meeting failed to secure a new contract. A second meeting followed in mid-2015. More than 50 members attended and still couldn't reach a deal. At this point, the old contract had already expired, and both sides continued to update a new draft. On September 23, 2015, the hashtag Performance Matters began to spread on Twitter. This was to show support for voice actors and raise awareness of the matter. But at the same time, SAG AFTRA members were holding a meeting between members to vote on a proposed strike. The proposal received a massive 96.55% approval. This decision was not made lightly. The meeting took nearly a month of discussions before a final decision was actually made. Despite the overwhelming approval, SAG AFTRA would not actually go on strike unless it became necessary. The union would continue to push for a new contract for its members. Fast forward to October 2016, SAG AFTRA and the interactive game companies continued talk. This would be the last time before the actors began their strike against the video game companies. Now that we have an idea of the timeline that led up to the strike, let's take a look at what the contract was supposed to be and why the talks failed. It's at this point my investigation hit a snag. I was able to contact representatives from both SAG AFTRA and the interactive game companies. Both sides told similar stories with some alterations. According to Sam Singer, the game company representative I got in contact with, the negotiations could have continued leading up to December 1st, 2016. At that time, the new contract would become null and void, meaning a new draft would have to be worked up and discussions would start from square one. The representative said that they offered members a 9% wage increase that would accelerate the entire payment into the first year. This was an improvement compared to the 3% per year for the next 3 years increase that the union was seeking. In other words, the game companies were going to increase the pay of actors at the full 9% at once, rather than changing the pay every year, which could impact budgets of games. SAG AFTRA allegedly never communicated to its members what was on the table when, on October 19th, it declined to counter the game company's last proposal and pushed away from the negotiation. Continuing discussion on the deal, Sam sent me an email explaining what went wrong with the new contract and why both parties couldn't reach an agreement. Quote, "This structure of additional compensation is so close to what SAG AFTRA is demanding monetarily that we believe most performers would conclude that the differences are not worth striking over." He continued saying, "The one economic difference between the parties is the company's response to the SAG AFTRA demands for additional income for performers. But here the difference is more about semantics, not about actual money for performers. The main difference is the terminology, what that additional money is called." Sam continued saying the SAG AFTRA proposal has two options for producers. The union's first proposal for an optional contingent fees structure is so onerous that no one would elect to use it. The union's second option is virtually identical in money to the company's proposal. If that wasn't odd enough, the email ended with the game companies asking SAG AFTRA to come to terms and end the strike. Quote, "The game companies have repeatedly asked union leaders to put this package to a vote of their membership. The union has refused, stating that union leaders have the right to conduct a strike without further authorizations from the membership. It is unfortunate that SAG AFTRA leadership is relying on a strike vote taken more than a year ago, October 6, 2015, before the companies made significant concessions in the areas discussed above for vocal stress, stunt coordination, and transparency." and before the companies put this generous economic proposal on the table. He continues saying, SAG AFTRA, let your members vote on the company's proposal. A prolonged strike only benefits non-union video game producers and non-union performance interests within the video game industry. It will also discourage the unorganized majority of developers and publishers from working with SAG AFTRA in the future. After this email, I began to contact SAG AFTRA about the strike. I came in contact with Sean Miller, a representative for SAG AFTRA. He later pointed me towards actor Phil LaMarr. Phil LaMarr has been one of the many voices to speak out. He was present at the EA picket that was held in October 2016. I spoke with Mr. LaMarr over Skype about what I knew of the strike and why the deal went south. One of the first issues we discussed was about stunt coordination and how it would affect health and pension. The game companies refused to agree to SAG AFTRA's proposal, which would have made it a requirement for professional stunt coordinators to be present at any and all motion capture stunt work. Currently, only a few game studios hire professional coordinators. Others are done by developers as they direct and record the actors. Phil LaMarr said that the new contract would have provided extra safety for all members and had no effect on the contract's health and pension sections. When I asked him why the proposal failed, he admitted that he didn't know the reasons. Next, we discussed what me thought to be the biggest strain on the negotiations, the rise in pay. Phil LaMarr was very open about the pay, admitting that actors were seeking higher pay, but not for the reasons me believed. He told me that the added pay was to better reflect the service they provided. I brought up the 9% pay increase and asked why that was shot down. Phil LaMarr said that SAG AFTRA gave the companies the choice to pay the compensation up front or to pay depending on how well the game sells. This would help smaller studios keep with bigger companies so they could afford professional actors. That part was left out when I spoke to the game company's representative. I pushed the subject and asked LaMarr to elaborate. He explained that game companies would underpay actors by using code names and giving actors partial scripts. LaMarr noticed my confusion and gave me an example. He told me about a friend of his, a fellow voice actor who auditioned for a video game character. The company did not tell him much about the character or what the game was about. Instead, they gave him a script that contained lines only for his character and began recording. Later, the voice actor found out he had voiced an important character in the open-world RPG Fallout 4, and the only reason he knew was because a fan told him how impressed they were with his work. It was at this point I brought up the financial compensation. This was designed to pay actors a bonus per session. Again, Phil LaMarr told me that was not completely true. The compensation would raise the more an actor recorded. For example, an actor would get paid an extra $100 for 3 sessions. Phil LaMarr said that compensation would be pointless. Many actors would record all of their lines within 1 or 2 sessions. I asked Phil how sessions worked. He told me that sessions were days, not takes, so an actor would work for hours and 1 session would equal 1 day. To make things worse, Phil LaMarr said, game companies wanted to use split sessions when recording bigger roles with a ton of lines. Split sessions was a way to pay actors less. If the actor needed multiple sessions, their pay would be divided by the number of sessions. One example LaMarr gave me was instead of paying an actor for 2 days of work, the game companies would split the pay as 1 day of work, which means they would split it within 2 sessions. Going by what Phil LaMarr said, and according to the chart that was provided to me by SAG AFTRA, 2 days of work would mean an actor would gain a $50 bonus. So actors would get a certain pay, strain their voices for hours, and receive a small compensation for additional days. The highest the compensation would go was $900 for 8 sessions. The game companies wanted to call this additional compensation, while SAG AFTRA wanted to call the bonus contingent compensation. This reflects on what the game company representative told me about terminology issues. Phil LaMarr and I quickly spoke about how something like that would affect smaller companies. LaMarr said that smaller companies have a different contract, and in fact, agreed to a newer contract that saw a price rise. I asked why these contracts were separate from the ones that are aimed at 11 big companies. He told me the contracts were different due to much smaller budget size. The contracts are based off companies' budget abilities and not their fame. I asked Phil LaMarr, seeing as SAG AFTRA made a new contract with smaller companies, why did they go on strike before the December 1st deadline instead of waiting for a final negotiation? Phil LaMarr quickly told me that the December 1st deadline was a lie made up by the game companies. The contract actually ended in February 2015 with a strike vote done a year prior to the final negotiations. I brought up the strike list of games that would be affected and questioned if a release of Crash Bandicoot, a game that was on the list, would affect the strike by making their efforts look like an empty threat. Phil LaMarr said the list isn't meant to stop games from being released. They were for SAG AFTRA members to warn them what games they could and could not work on. I questioned Lamar about this tactic further. He explained that if games created after February 2015 had any new roles added, they would not be filled by SAG AFTRA members. That would include DLCs. I then asked Phil Lamar about voice stress, the biggest issues many actors were concerned about. Phil Lamar told me that the new contract required a warning from game companies about the roles and how vocally stressful they could be. An example he gave me was a warning of a role needed an actor to use stressful voice changes for up to 2 hours. Lamar also reiterated that the new contract was mainly about safety. The new contract was to help ease the stress of actors' vocals. It wanted to copy what voice actors do with animation and possibly have multiple actors in the booth and record together. One would rest while another would act. Phil Lamar assured me it wasn't all bad. He said that both sides agreed to improve communications for best practices. This would allow the actors to speak with game companies to figure out what would be best for their vocals. To end our talk, I brought up how the strike could affect actors and developers. Phil Lamar said that the strike was not to harm developers and that SAG AFTRA was well aware of the issues that plague the industry. SAG AFTRA wants everybody in entertainment to know that they are willing to stand for their rights. Lamar said the remaining length of the strike is unknown but will continue. After speaking with Mr. Lamar, I tried to reach out to the game company's representative, but found that the website that was created in response to SAG AFTRA was gone. I will continue to reach out to both sides and will update as I learn more of the situations.